Google DeepMind has just achieved a new level of robotic skill, the ability to compete and win at table tennis, which is a game that requires years of training if you want to compete at an expert level. The robot they used was an IRB 1100, which you can see here, and that was mounted on a pair of linear gantries, like the one you can see here. And it was equipped with a pair of compact cameras operating at 125 hertz, which means that they can capture 125 frames per second, which is quite relevant for table tennis, where the ball can reach speeds of 70 miles per hour or more. The reason for two cameras was stereo vision, to understand the 3D position of the ball. They also used a phase space motion capture system, like is used for creating character animations. There were 20 cameras placed around the table, which were there for the sole purpose of tracking the opponent's paddle. To kick things off, the robot was first trained on the kinds of skills that all players need, like forehand topspin or hitting balls cross-court. After it was ready, it was trained for 3 months by doing sustained rallies against more than 50 opponents, resulting in more than 14,000 different combinations of ball speed, height, direction, trajectory, and spin, plus an additional 3,000 situations specifically related to returning serves. After that, competitive performance was measured in 29 live matches, pitting the robot against various levels of experience, ranging from beginner to tournament pro. That's the first time that developers had set out to play full games of table tennis against a series of players that a robot had never seen before. To do that, they needed an approach that would allow the robot to adapt to specific players, which it did by keeping track of key stats for each player, highlighting the strengths and weaknesses of each one. And tactical decisions about how to play were based in part on those stats. So the robot was able to adapt to different kinds of opponents. In fact, there are 2 decisions players can make each time a ball comes their way. First, there's an understanding about which shots would be the most competitive. But there's also the fact that some choices are harder to do than others. And so the robot was not only trained to evaluate the advantage of each shot, but also to calculate its own chance of succeeding at executing that. So it might choose a less competitive option if it wasn't sure enough about its ability to pull off the better one. And all of those decisions were made in under 20 milliseconds. And here's how it turned out. In those 29 matches, it beat all of the beginners, lost against the experts every single time, and won 55% of the matches against everyone else. Basically, it performed like a solid intermediate level competitor who's been playing for at least a year and who plays weekly or multiple times per week. And even against advanced players, it won about 1/3 of the rallies, so it could deliver an interesting game, even for top players. Now, here are some of the innovations that came from this. One was the idea of incorporating a decision model about how to play each ball based on the robot's assessment of its own capabilities to succeed with each option. That's kind of an obvious idea, but it's actually the first time that concept was included in a model like this. Another takeaway was the value of using imitation learning as a way to seed the training process before running simulations. That turned out to be much more efficient than doing simulations on all possible ball conditions, most of which don't actually occur in real games. And you recall that the robot was designed to track the statistics of each opponent in real time, which allowed it to adapt to individual styles of different players. That was the first time a robot had ever been trained in that way. But perhaps most important of all, the project showed that high levels of performance can be achieved using fairly simple neural networks and fairly simple algorithms, which was possible due to a focus on system design. So a key takeaway was that system design can be just as important of a success factor as architecture, algorithms, and data sets. Now, based on how things turned out, here are my insider tips for how to beat this guy at table tennis. Number 1, it turns out that between each ball hit, he has to reset himself to the same initial pose with his paddle facing forward. And there's about 100 milliseconds of latency as well. And those two things put him at a big disadvantage if you hit very fast balls. So slam him hard. Number 2, the developers had to make sure that the robot didn't damage its own paddle or the table, so they programmed him to keep a safe distance from the table at all times. So you'll put him at a big disadvantage if you hit balls that stay very low on the table, especially serves with lots of underspin. He missed a lot of those. Number 3, statistics show that his backhand is weaker than his forehand, so target that side more. And number 4, he's actually physically unable to reach balls that land very close to the net. So drop them there, my friend. And those are my insider tips on how to put this guy away at table tennis. Now, where can this take us? Well, if you haven't been following this yet, there's the RoboCup competition. The idea is to field a team of robots that will be ready to take on the World Cup soccer champion team by 2050. But as you can see here, we have a very long way to go on that one still. Good luck, guys. Meanwhile, thanks for watching and see you next time.